Here's the thing. Birds are real, and it's mean to say that they're not. We're back. We're back. Now, before you hit pause, before you close out, we did warn you about this last episode, but here's another warning. We're remote today. We're not in the same place. The sound is a little different, but it's fine. You can get through it. You're smart. You're capable. I believe in you.
A little bit of noisy audio never hurt anyone. Yeah, we're recording this episode through good old Zoom. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's adequate and we'll be back in person with our high definition, high fidelity audio quality for the next episode.
Yeah. This will just make you appreciate what you had even more. But the
Yeah,
the
exactly.
content in this episode is gonna be sick. So just stick around. If you don't know, this is a birding podcast. I'm Sam,
And I'm Quiche.
and we're about to talk about some birds. We're gonna start with our field notes section. This is where we talk about the birds that we've seen in the past week or so. I did some usual stuff, but Keish has been intriguing me. He's been kind of teasing this to me over the last couple of hours. I don't know what it is, but it seems that perhaps he's seen something big. So would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so with Thanksgiving break and everything, I'm back home in Massachusetts. So as you guys know, I've gotten into bird photography over this summer, and I've been in Philly for all that time. So I haven't really been back home in Massachusetts and haven't been able to get any birding in here. So I was excited to do that. If you're from the Massachusetts area, you may know of Quabbin Reservoir. A lot of hot spots on eBird around Quabbin Reservoir. It's a freshwater reservoir. It supplies a lot of drinking water to a lot of Massachusetts residents, and it's a hotspot for wildlife.
Is this where you
So
took me like 4 years ago, 5 years ago, however long ago that was?
no, so that was a Westville Lake recreation area. That was like really local to me in my town basically.
Cool.
That's also a cool spot. We saw, well, I don't know, we weren't really thinking about birds when we were there like 5, 6, whatever
Yeah.
years ago.
We did see a salamander and a praying mantis though.
Yeah, that was cool. So no, not there. I did that's where I saw the cedar waxwings though that I
Right.
yeah. Yeah, but I wanted to get some like hardcore birding in, you know? Like I wanted to
Hmm.
go to like a real hot spot where like, that was popping off on eBird. So yeah, I found this spot on eBird, this like really remote section of Quabbin Reservoir. So I went there today, this morning actually. The day after Thanksgiving, I was hoping that no one would be there, given that it's the day after Thanksgiving, and I was right. I was the only one there. It was a little scary in the morning because like I had no cell service and I'm like in the middle of the woods. I don't know, bears exist in the area.
Yeah. You
Um,
sometimes want like at least one other person there.
Yeah, I don't think I could have dragged anyone out day after Thanksgiving at 6 in the morning to drive
Yeah.
45 minutes away. Oh wait,
Hmm.
that reminds me though. After this, I went birding with my friends locally, so I'll tell you about that.
Nice.
I know I'm leading you on here a little bit. I was expecting like 6, 7, 8 lifers from what I was seeing on eBird. I was like, dude, this is gonna be amazing in terms of like a lot of waterfowl, like a lot of
Hmm.
ducks, duck adjacent birds. But it was actually really slow though. Like not as hype as I imagined it would be. And then I went to like a different spot after this spot on Quabbin Reservoir that was a little more populated. I saw some birders and I was like, "Hey, is it just me? Was I like in the wrong spot or something?" But it says on eBird over here it's like it was like super active. And then they said it was like there was kind of a cold snap, cold front happening, and like a week ago it was very active, and in the past couple of days when which is when I've been here, it really
Right.
hasn't been that active. So
Uh,
some unlucky timing for some of these birds, but I was able to see the common loon.
no way. Wow.
Yeah,
What
it was
timing. If you
yeah, it
listened
was
to
great.
last episode, that was in the closing caw, the bird call quiz. That's so cool. That's been like kind of a goal of ours. I think we've probably said it on the pod. We've said it to each other quite often. We really wanted to see common loons this winter. Wow. How was it? Was it amazing?
It was amazing. And like yeah, like you said, we've been mentioning it on the pod in previous episodes like hey, we really want to see this bird. Like I said, I didn't get like the 6 to 7 to 8 lifers that I like would have wanted, I guess. But this was like the main one that I was really hoping to see and I got to see it. So it was great. I heard that crazy call.
You
that we
did.
played
Oh,
last
wow.
episode.
How loud
It
is it
was
like in person?
it was actually really cool because I was the only one out there in this like, very secluded area of this reservoir. And I don't know, it was something to behold for sure. The loon, it was a singular loon, dude. I felt really lucky to see it.
Hmm.
Um, it was in its immature plumage, so it didn't have that like stark black head.
Right.
So, wasn't in its like super pretty breeding plumage, but still really great to see. It sounds silly, but I was the only one out there, and sometimes people talk to themselves, So I said out loud like, "Wow, no ducks," and then I turned around and there was a common loon right there. Um,
It heard
Common
you.
loon's not a duck though, so I was right, but.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just waiting, you know. It was waiting for you to give up on the ducks and then it could show itself.
This makes me feel like we're in like a simulation, like our simulation overlords were like, damn, this guy really wanted to see a common loon. We'll just spawn one in for him.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it
Yeah.
felt like, because it was really just one. And then I saw the usual suspects, like dark-eyed juncos,
Nice.
tufted tip mice, golden crowned kinglet. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, always nice to round out with some of those. That's
hmm
very cool. I am jealous, but I'm also very happy for you.
Thanks.
Uh,
Thanks.
this dude,
Hopefully we get to see
Quiche,
one in the Philly area, maybe
I
like
know.
December, January time.
This man been birding for like a couple months, goes out, sees a barred owl, goes out, sees a common loon. You're spoiled, let me tell you.
I know I am spoiled.
No, that's dedication. That's dedication. I
It's
did
really
go
funny
out.
though, because we
Yeah.
do joke. Because like anytime we go out now, like even today, I was like, oh, maybe I'll see an owl. Like I,
Hmm.
you always say I saw an owl too early in my birding career.
Too early. Gotta wait 8 years, and if you see one, you never think you'll see one again. No, I'm just kidding. That's gatekeeping, and I don't gatekeep. Quiche absolutely deserved to see that owl. I went birding this weekend too. Well, okay, actually, we both went birding last weekend. I guess there's been a little gap between recording. Our usual spot, John Hines, was closed. So we ended
hmm
up going to a spot neither of us had been to for birding, which is FDR Park in like South Philly. I'm pretty sure. Bad with geography, but I'm
Yep,
pretty
like
sure about that one.
southeast.
And we got really excited because we thought we saw some cackling geese, which if you remember like quite a few episodes back, that's like a Canada goose but much smaller. And they're hard to identify because the plumage is like exactly the same as a Canada goose, and the proportions are almost the same as a Canada goose. And then we also thought we saw some great cormorants in the middle of this little lake, which double-crested cormorants are the common ones. You see them everywhere, at least where we are. But great cormorants are rare, and they have just like a little bit of white on their bellies. And so we saw a cormorant with white on its bellies. So we thought, wow, two great lifers that are really hard to find. We then posted our photos to our community Discord. Quiche was very brave and asked for help identifying, and immediately we were told, no, that is a Canada goose. You did not see a cackling goose.
Our reasoning was like pretty good though. Like compared to like a typical Canada goose, maybe these were just like juveniles or something. But
Yeah,
they did have a shorter beak and they did have a stubbier neck, which are
they
like
did.
pretty telltale signs. But alas, not a cackling goose.
Not a cackling goose. I had already put it into Merlin though, and Merlin told me it was a cackling goose, so I added it to my life list. And I have now found out that you cannot remove birds from your life list.
Yeah, that's
Um,
tough. You'll have to add it again when you actually see one.
I
But
know.
yeah, this does go to show Merlin is not 100% accurate sometimes. I
Yeah.
think I uploaded a photo of one of the cormorants that we thought, was maybe a great cormorant,
Hmm.
and it told me it was a turkey. So Merlin is not infallible at all,
Maybe
especially for
we're just
photo
way
spec.
off. Maybe we don't know what cormorants are. Maybe we don't know what turkeys are.
We've been doing this wrong this whole time.
I know. So sorry to everyone who listened to us. But today I also did go out to John Hines, our normal spot. Saw, a lot of the usual suspects. Ducks are coming on real heavy. Coots. There were so many coots today, more coots than I've ever seen in my life. But a couple of new things that I guess I haven't seen at least this year. Saw my first ruddy duck of the year. I used to see a lot of ruddy ducks last probably January, February, and I miss them. They're very cute. So I
Yeah,
saw one of those
I also
today.
saw a ruddy duck today, which was a lifer for me. I've never seen them before. They're
Nice.
they're really cool with their like baby blue bill.
Yeah, I love that. and they have the little pintail thing that pintail ducks have, where their tail looks like a pin, kind of sticks up.
Oh yeah, good
Uh,
point.
and let's see, saw a pied-billed grebe, which I'm not sure if I've ever seen. It's another duck adjacent thing. If I had to like put all of the waterfowl on a gradient, I would stick the grebe in between the coot and the duck. So
Mm,
that should give you a perfect visualization of what that is. And then the crowning jewel, one that I've seen before, but it's been a while. Saw a couple of hooded mergansers, hoodie mergs, as we like to say here.
yeah, hoodie
Um,
mergs, a colloquial term, or I don't know if colloquial is the right way to use that,
the
but
two of us use it, but
yeah.
yeah, excited to see those. They're very cool and just barely got a glimpse of them. They were really behind some thickets, but saw them enough to get a picture and put it into Merlin, and I've added that to my life list, even though I had seen one before.
Yeah, the hoodie merg is one of the birds that I was anticipating to see when I went birding, but I did not. But I'll see one day. My
Yeah,
friend though, while I was out, he texted me. He was like, "Hey, I just saw a hoodie a hoodie merg today." I was like,
no way.
"Gosh, dang it!" He saw one like he has a lake house, so he just like looks outside his window. There was a hoodie merg right there, and I drove
Nice.
45 minutes to Quabbin Reservoir and was not
But
able
you
to see
saw a
one.
loon though.
I
Good
saw a common
trade-off.
window, so I can't be too upset.
Yeah, that's very
But
fair.
yeah, two of my friends from my hometown, we went. I took them birding. Also, longtime listeners of the pod. We play Wingspan all the time, but they haven't been like birding per se. So I don't know. It was kind of cool to lead like like a like a very small bird walk, a trio of birders. We saw some cool stuff when we went out. We saw American crows doing some mobbing behavior to a red-tailed hawk,
Nice.
chased it away. Saw some we kept a list. We saw like 20 something species when we went out just locally a couple of days ago. So that was really cool. Kind
Yeah,
of like taking some non-birders out and showing them around, and really glad I was able to show them something. That it wasn't just like a dud of a morning or anything. So yeah,
yeah.
that was a great time.
Well, definitely. I think like that's kind of one of the things is that when you've lived somewhere for so long, you kind of don't focus on the birds that you're seeing every day. But if you
Hmm.
have someone who like comes in, like you were able to do for your friends and like just kind of help them, I don't know, focus on the birds that are around, there's a lot of cool stuff you get to see. So glad you got to do that. The place where you live does kind of determine how successful at birding you are, which kind of leads us into our first hoot topic.
So this question comes from Nick, one of the friends that I went birding with a couple of days ago. And the question is, if your only consideration was birding, where would be the best place to live in the United States?
It's an interesting question, one that I cannot perhaps answer like optimally. I have not been everywhere in the United States, so I don't have that lived experience. But off of the top of my head, I do have a couple of leans, places I
Okay.
would expect would be good. First, Hawaii. I mean, that's just I haven't seen any of that wildlife really. I've never been there. So it would be like lifer after lifer for me, basically over there.
I didn't think of
And
Hawaii. That's a great point. Totally different birds out there compared to like mainland USA.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So I think it would be very interesting. I guess I don't know exactly what kind of variety there is there, if perhaps there's somewhere with a greater variety, but it is, a smattering of small islands. And as we know from many of our episodes, small islands produce some pretty wild wildlife. The other one I immediately think of is Florida, like way down
Hmm.
south Florida, down by the Keys, down by the Everglades, where I have been. Not, I haven't lived there, but I have been there. Yeah, just that swampy area is so amazing for like water birds, especially.
Yeah, you said you saw a roseate spoonbill there, right?
Yep, saw some roseate spoonbills, wood storks, tricolored herons, great egrets, black-crowned night herons, pelicans,
Yeah.
the whole gaggle.
Speaking of pelicans, did you see that in the Discord someone posted that they saw like a flock of pelicans like inland Pennsylvania?
Yeah, I did see that. That
That
was
was like,
wild.
yeah, I really wonder how like the like what phenomenon led that led them to like be so far inland. It's really
I know, it's
interesting.
really interesting. I mean, when I lived in Colorado, there actually were a fair amount of pelicans in the summers.
In
It was
Colorado,
in
really?
Colorado, yeah, because
A
well,
lot of lakes?
yeah, on some lakes, the water was pretty hard to come by in Colorado. So if you found like a good water source, a good lake, reservoir, whatever, there were a lot of birds that would be there because they kind of have to, right? They have to
Right,
go where the
yeah.
water is. It was hard to find a place to see birds, but if you found a place, there were a lot of good birds there.
Huh, that makes sense. Yeah, that's a good point.
You have any thoughts where you'd want to live if the only consideration were birding?
Yeah, kind of like you, I don't know. I don't know what the best answer is in terms of like, maximum efficiency birding. My mind definitely goes to Florida at first, but I was thinking Alaska.
Ooh, puffins. Puffins in
You see
Alaska.
puffins, you're getting a lot of owls there, you're getting bald eagles as far as the eye can see over there.
Right.
You're getting a lot of migrant shorebirds like we were talking about in earlier episodes.
Yeah, if you get to one of those like little islands of Alaska, I bet you could probably see some of those really hard to see migrating birds, like the frigate
Like
birds
the, like
or
the frigate birds,
albatrosses or whatever.
albatross, and a lot of the birds that are like harder to see inland. Good chance to see them in Alaska. A lot of waterfowl as well. I guess everyone thinks of Alaska as this like just vast ice scape. I think a lot of it is, but I think a lot of it also isn't. A lot of forests.
Yeah, lots of
There's
forests.
you're gonna see your small birds like your warblers, woodpeckers, stuff like that. So yeah, I think Alaska. Maybe not your most obvious answer there, but I think it would be great for some birding.
Yeah, I would agree. And Alaska is gigantic, so
True.
like there's got to be a lot of variety there. There's a million lakes too, which is big to have like the ocean and to have lakes in the one state is really great.
I didn't know there was 1 million lakes in Alaska. That's crazy.
Oh, I mean, that was just like an exaggeration number,
Oh,
like a
oh, okay.
million. You know what I
Sorry.
mean? Yeah.
See, this is the issue with remote recording. I can't harder to tell detect sarcasm.
I know. In my mind, when I'm sarcastic, it's very obvious. But in everyone else's mind, what I've heard from everyone who's ever spoken to me, they cannot tell a difference based on my voice alone. So apologies to our listeners who have taken me seriously when they should not have. But
Yeah, I
uh,
think when I'm able to look at you when we record, it's a little more obvious, but yeah, that's a good point. Maybe just from the audio, it's harder to tell.
yeah, there's lots of good places. I mean, like I said, I was in landlocked Colorado and I saw pelicans. So kind of whatever state you are in,
Hmm.
there's definitely lots of birds that we're not thinking of that you're maybe not thinking of either that you could definitely go see. Our next hoot topic was sent in by Jax, a frequent hoot topic suggester. We very much appreciate it because they're always great. All right, and here's the question. Which bird would be best at ultimate frisbee? For those who don't know, we are, or I guess in my case, I should say we're pretty big ultimate frisbee players. So this is relevant.
We both played on the Ultimate Frisbee team in college, all 4 years, so definitely was into it then. I play here and then now, a little less nowadays. I feel like birding's superseded Frisbee as like a hobby for me.
Yeah.
Um,
My knees stopped working, so I'm old, so I stopped.
so yeah, a good question, and a lot of factors to think about, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how deep we want to get into Ultimate Frisbee mechanics here. Do you have any initial thoughts?
I mean, initial thoughts, if I'm thinking just about some of the strengths you'd want, right? My mind goes, if we're thinking domestic birds, maybe a roadrunner, something that's pretty fast on the ground, making some sharp cuts. As we know from the cartoons, they're pretty good at avoiding coyotes. So that could be helpful if you're playing frisbee. And they can also, I know they fight a lot of snakes, roadrunners do. And so they kind of do this thing, sort of like chickens, maybe if you've seen chickens like jumping around. Chickens will jump up in the air and kind of like use their talons as a defense mechanism. Roadrunners will do that, but more as like an attacking thing, trying to get that snake. So it's useful, I think, to be able to run fast and to jump high when you're playing Ultimate Frisbee.
Yeah, and if you're fighting snakes, snake bites happen really fast, so your reaction time's got to be really good to dodge those.
Right, exactly.
I don't know, when I think of ultimate, I think of throwing the frisbee, and obviously birds don't have hands.
Right.
So, I don't know, I feel like it's a tough question. So, I went to my initial thought went to like marking, which is like defending the player that has the disc. Um,
Ooh, yep.
so a bird with a big wingspan. I was thinking maybe like a condor,
Yeah. Good
a
old
an
California
ostrich even
condor, right?
on the defensive end. I feel like a an ostrich. Can ostriches jump?
I assume they can jump. I don't
Yeah.
think they can like float kind of in the same way that a chicken or a roadrunner can, but
Yeah, I feel like I could see like a bird with a large wingspan being like a defensive specialist.
yeah.
Just a big body, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's nice. That's a good idea.
maybe some of these smarter birds for some tactics. Like you can
Yeah.
picture like some magpies or some corvids like devising a zone defense or something.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Let the other team beat themselves. Yeah, okay. So if we had a starting seven, if you don't know, Ultimate's played 7-on-7 most of the time. There's not necessarily hard and fast rules, but that's typically
Hmm.
the rule set. So we have our Roadrunner, our, we want to say California Condor,
Sure, we could do a California condor.
Ostrich, Magpie.
I feel like we need to get a raptor in there, no?
Yeah, definitely. Peregrine Falcon, you want speed, right?
Yeah, that's good. So we can go with the peregrine falcon. I feel like we can throw another raptor in there, maybe an owl.
Ooh, yeah. You
We'll
want
just
some
say like
you want an intimidation factor too.
yeah.
Like vibes are a big part of Ultimate. So
Mhm.
great horned owl. You know, they got those scary horns. They look angry all the time. That could be a good one.
Yeah, I like that. And looking at our starting seven now, we don't have a flashy player yet, you know? Like we have
Right.
people who are going to do their job, play their role, and are going to do a great job at that. But we need just some pizzazz, you know?
Yeah, we do. Team needs personality.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe a sage grouse. I don't know if you've seen those things, but they are some of the weirdest looking birds I've ever seen. I got chased down a mountain by one actually once.
Really? In my mind, isn't a grouse like a kind of like a chicken or something or a pheasant?
Yeah. Hmm.
A sage grouse. Do they look cool? Let me look it up.
It looks cool. It's like very noticeable and it defends really well.
All right, I'm looking it up now. Oh yes, that's the flashy bird right there. I think that's gonna round out the squad pretty nicely.
Perfect.
You got
All
chased
right.
down a hill by one of these?
Chased down a mountain.
A
Yep, in
mountain.
Colorado. We were in the Rocky Mountains. We were in the middle of this hike, and these guys came around the corner. They're like, "Hey, watch out for the grouse." We were like, "What do you mean?" But then, yeah, this grouse came out and it chased us, and we like ran away from it because it was coming at us really fast. I did have my camera with me though, so I was like turning around the whole time, and I would stop and try to get a couple pictures, but then it would get really close, so I'd turn around and keep running. We did manage
Wait,
to get away, but
I haven't seen any photos of this. Send me some. Send me some. I
yeah,
want to see
I'll
it.
send some. We'll post some to the Birds Are Real Instagram
Instagram.
story.
I think that's a pretty well-rounded starting seven we have there.
I think so. Anyone who's listening who wants to build their own seven, let us know what your squad is. Send us an email. We'll see head to head who has a better squad. We'll be objective.
Totally. So yeah, thanks for the hoot topics, Jax and Nick. Sam's gonna lead the main topic for this episode.
Yes, indeed. So, a little background about me, right? My coworkers found out that I'm a big bird guy. Some of them do listen to the podcast. Shout out to my coworkers. I'm not gonna say the name of the company because I don't know if that's like copyright infringement or something. I don't really know anything about that. But just on the
And
off chance that it is, I'm not gonna say it. But a couple months ago at work, I was asked to start providing daily bird facts at our like morning meetings. So I went through all my classics, which I've said a bunch of times on the podcast, probably 2 or 3 times each. I don't know if you knew this, Keish, but the bald eagle sound that you hear in movies, it's not actually a bald eagle.
I've run out of different ways to react to this information.
Well, so exactly. Similarly, I started to run out of bird facts to give. So what I did is I ordered this pack of bird trivia cards. It's called Sibley Birders Trivia. Sibley is big, reputable in the birding world, so I think it's some good trivia, good information. It's a lot of like multiple choice and true or false questions. So I pulled this card at work the other day that made me think, oh, here's a good idea for a main topic. So I'm going to quiz you really quickly.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So each card has 2 questions on it. One is labeled easier and the other is labeled harder. So we're going to start with the easier one. What North American bird has the longest bill in terms of absolute length? It is multiple choice, so I'll give you the choices unless you want to just rip off a guess.
Absolute length of bill.
Yep, so
Um,
not like in relation to the rest of its body, just like full, like absolute length, which is the biggest, longest, I should say.
Absolute length. I'm thinking like a shorebird or something, maybe a duck. I mean, it's in the name. Long-billed dowitcher. Maybe it's a long-billed dowitcher. I don't know. That's my, without hearing the multiple choice, that would be my guess, maybe.
Wow. Okay. So I'll give you the multiple choice. A is the long-billed dowitcher.
Oh my, okay.
B, the great blue heron.
Mhm.
C, black skimmer. Or D, white pelican.
Ooh, this is all really tough because a lot of these birds, their like body size is so different, right?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking the heron, like compared to the long-billed dowitcher, the heron's bill in relation to its body is smaller, but in terms of absolute size, it may be similar. But I'm also thinking that the pelican is a pretty big bird, and I feel like its bill is also pretty big. Black skimmer is also, I haven't seen one in real life. You got a really sick pic of one
Yeah.
doing its skimming thing. I haven't seen one in real life yet though. I know I said the long-billed dowitcher before. I might switch to the pelican.
That was a good switch. It is the pelican.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Pelicans are huge. You are right that long-billed dowitcher in relation to its own body, I think it probably beats most of these birds. But
Hmm.
yeah, white pelican, biggest North American bill. Want to have the harder question?
Sure. Just want to say this is really fun. Where we like trivia in general, so bird trivia is best of both worlds for us.
Yeah, I'm really glad I have this box of like 400 trivia questions.
Yeah, we've been decimating the Philly Quizzo scene in the
Or
past. We kind
we've
of
been
suck now.
decimated by the Philly Quizzo
Yeah.
scene
Lately
these
we have
days.
not been winning.
Yeah,
In the past we were doing pretty okay
we
though.
did. We did okay back then. All right,
Yeah.
here's the harder question. Which North American bird has the longest bill relative to its body length? And I will let you know it's none of the previous ones that were given as possibilities.
Initial thought is American woodcock, but let me hear the multiple choice.
All right. So A is the brown pelican, not the white pelican, which was the answer last time.
Okay.
B, the ruby-throated hummingbird. C, the long-billed curlew. Or D, the gull-billed tern.
So a lot of these birds, I know in general what they look like, but like not the exact species, right? Like I know what a curlew looks like. They have a curved bill,
Hmm.
but I don't know that exact species. I don't know exactly what a brown pelican looks like. Okay, well, ruby-throated hummingbirds are really small, and they're actually, now that I think about it, a ruby-throated hummingbird's bill is probably like the same size as its entire body. So I'm gonna go with that. Be the ruby-throated hummingbird.
That was a good guess, but the answer is actually C, the long-billed curlew.
Ah, got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
the bill makes up 1/3 of the bird's total length, which
Wow,
is quite a
that's
lot.
wild.
Yeah, to put that in
It
perspective, if I had a bill that was a third of my total height, I would be able to dunk a basketball with my mouth if I were just a little bit more athletic.
the curlew, if I'm not mistaken, it has like a pretty droopy bill, right?
I think so, yeah. So at this point, do you have any idea what our main topic is going to be about?
Bills,
Yep. Bills or
the Buffalo
Beaks.
Bills.
Yeah. Oh, the Buffalo Bills, exactly. We're talking about football this week, everyone. This is not a bird podcast anymore. Just kidding. It's a bird podcast still.
Yeah.
We are talking about bills or beaks or whatever you're supposed to call them. I think we've kind of had this question come up before, and my
Yeah, I
answer
mean
was I think they're interchangeable. But since this is the main topic, I did feel more compelled to find out a real answer. So I consulted our favorite website, allaboutbirds.org, and I got an answer. And let me tell you, the answer is shocking.
really
No, not really. The answer
groundbreaking.
is that they're interchangeable. Um,
See, but like sometimes one of the terms just fits better.
yeah.
Like I
So,
wouldn't, I'm not gonna call a like an eagle, like a bald eagle's beak a bill. It's
right.
that thing's a beak.
Exactly. So there is no like scientific or taxonomic difference between a beak or a bill. They do both mean the same thing. But like generally, if we're just talking about what people are saying, birders are going to call it a beak if they're talking about like a bird with a hard, solid beak, sparrow, or like an eagle or something like that. And a
Okay.
lot of times they'll call it a bill if they're talking about something like a duck, other aquatic birds, something that seems like either a little thinner or a little more like fleshy. Sometimes people describe it as, but they're actually completely interchangeable.
Okay, good to know.
So just to let you know off the top, I'm going to be using them interchangeably this episode. And if you don't like that, take it up with your local ornithologist because they made those rules. All About Birds did have another paragraph on this page that I'm just going to read word for word because I do think it's hilarious. They did a great job with this.
Okay.
So it's written like very like scientifically formally, right?
Hmm.
One important caveat. If you tell that old joke about the duck going into the drugstore to buy some chapstick and the cashier asks how he's going to pay for it and the duck says, put it on my bill, well, that joke does not work if you say beak. Thank you. Allaboutbirds.org.
A nice dad joke from allaboutbirds.org there.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes me feel good about using that as my primary source of research all the time.
Who's
Um,
does it I mean I should know this.
I
Do you
think
think
Cornell Labs powers it or like
yeah.
gives them a lot of the data. It says like powered by Cornell Labs on the website, I think.
Okay, cool, cool.
So I think I remember that you did a little bit of beak research or bill research when preparing for the feathers episode. Do you remember what they're made of?
Beaks. Oh, I pretended to do beak research because I was being silly.
Nice.
But I didn't actually do any beak research. Beaks are they also made of keratin or
Yeah,
maybe not?
so
They are?
the inner part of a beak is made of bone, right? It's like a jaw
Okay.
that we have. But instead of
That
the
makes sense.
skin surrounding it that we have, beaks
Hmm.
are surrounded by a layer of keratin, which if you missed that episode, that's what fingernails are made of. It's what baleen is made out of. Shout out baleen whales.
Shout out baleen whales. They don't get shouted out enough.
I know. But like our fingernails, the keratin on birds' beaks, it does actually grow like pretty slowly, like our fingernails do. With a wild bird's like typical behavior, the how often it uses its mouth on like pretty like hard stuff, it that keeps it from overgrowing, right? It kind of like naturally kind of like shaves it down little by little.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
like aren't there cases with like wild pigs or like javelinas where they like if they don't use their teeth, they like overgrow and like start damaging like their face?
Yeah, that can happen. This is called beak overgrowth. I think it does have a fancier name. I can't remember it, but it is called beak overgrowth.
Okay.
And it can happen sometimes in like in nature. Like wild birds will sometimes have beak overgrowth. If they do have it, it probably means that something is wrong with them that's not letting them like groom, eat, or drink naturally or normally.
Hmm.
But it does also happen to pet birds quite often because they're not out in the wild. They don't really have all these experiences that are kind of shaving down their keratin.
Hmm.
So for those birds, pet birds, bird in captivity, even birds that are going through like extended rehab, they need their bills trimmed from time to time. Same as like if you have an indoor cat, you have to trim their claws. But like feral cats don't need that because they're wearing down their claws just from running around in the wild.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so trimmed down isn't like exactly the way I would describe it. From what I've seen, it's kind of more like sanding them down or using like a Dremel. Is that a tool? I'm not a big tool guy, but you know,
Yeah, dude.
one of those.
The
Yeah,
Dremel, classic tool.
there you go. So it's painless for birds since keratin doesn't have any nerve endings. It's like cutting your fingernails, you know? But I have seen
Hmm.
videos of raptor rehabbers doing it to like eagles and falcons. I would be terrified to do that. Those are powerful birds, but they're just sticking their little tool right in their jaws. Birds are letting them and they're shaving it down a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool. So it was interesting that you mentioned like the extended rehab because that's something I wouldn't necessarily think of. We think of like pets and like you mentioned indoor cats, they're not necessarily using their claws like they would in the wild, so they would overgrow.
Mhm.
But I didn't think about birds that are like, being rehabilitated also experiencing that overgrowth.
Yeah, I think that's like one of the big things that like a good rehab center really looks out for because it can damage, and that's not something that those birds really normally have any experience in dealing with because they've
Mhm.
been like wild their whole lives and they like naturally have it just stay at pretty much the correct length. So shout out bird rehabbers. So talking about beaks still, if you've ever seen a turkey vulture relatively close up, you may
Mhm.
notice that there seems like there's kind of like this just gaping hole that goes horizontally through the top of its beak. Looks almost like you could like pick it up from there. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yep.
Those are called nares, which are actually just nostrils. That's Nares, nares. But they're
Mhm.
just nostrils, right? They use them to breathe. They use them to filter out particles, all the same things that our nostrils do.
I took a photo of a mallard when we were at Pod last weekend, and mallards also have them. So I'm assuming a lot of other birds have them too.
Yeah, yeah, all birds actually have like nostrils. Some of them have them kind of that look more similar to the vulture. Like coots have it where it's more similar to the vulture like that. Some of them
Yeah.
have it where it's kind of more like ours, where it's like two holes that go inwards.
Yeah, now I'm trying to picture a yellow warbler with nostrils, and it's freaking me out.
I think they're small on like the tiny birds, you know. So I've got another bird trivia question for you from our trivia cards. This one's a true or false question. So true or false, birds do not have a sense of smell.
Birds do not have a sense of smell. That is false.
That is false. But if you had asked me in 1955, I would have told you it was true. Because until like the 60s or so, ornithologists thought that birds were anosmic, which is the scientific word for can't smell.
Anosmic.
hmm
Hmm.
They thought this because the godfather of North American birding, J.J. Audubon himself, just kind of told everyone that birds couldn't smell. So everyone was like, oh, okay, cool. And then they just didn't look into it any further.
If Mr. Audubon himself says it, you gotta listen, right?
I know. But it was like a little more involved than that, but not much more involved, honestly. Audubon really wanted to be right about this, so he kind of just did some like confirmation hunting. So he set up this quote unquote test for some turkey vultures, which are scavengers, if you didn't know. He took some rotting carcasses and hid them underneath a log to see if the vultures would be able to find it and eat it by smell, because they couldn't see it, obviously.
Hmm.
The vultures ignored it, so Audubon was like, "Hey, see, those dudes can't smell nothing."
Yeah,
Um,
that's some rigorous research right there.
Rigorous testing
Totally,
right there.
totally following the scientific method.
hmm Well, in the
Yeah.
60s, they found out the vultures could smell it. They just thought it smelled really gross, and they didn't want to go
Yeah.
find it. Yeah,
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
yeah. Vultures are scavengers, but they don't eat rotten things. They like eating things that are fresh. But so, other than smelling, what kind of uses like do you associate with bills?
Well, as we know, bills come in many different shapes and sizes. So the shape of the bill can determine how it acquires food. Maybe like mating displays, maybe. I don't know if the shape or like the resonance inside their bill affects their calls at all or not.
It
That's
does,
all I can
yeah.
think of.
Yeah, so those are definitely things like eating, mating displays, making calls, protection, you know. But here's one thing that you probably don't immediately think of that maybe no one immediately thinks of. I certainly didn't. But toucans, right? You know, toucans, they have those
Wow.
very iconic bills, real honkers, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. But so they like mostly eat like berries, small fruits, things that don't really require a gigantic beak. So people are like, why do they have that beak? You know? One of the answers people came up with is, maybe mating displays similar to like a peacock's tail or a sage grouse's everything, just like kind of
Yep.
extra, just to be extra. But the actual answer is so sick. Or like, I don't know, I shouldn't say the actual answer because, with everything, there's a whole lot of reasons why it is the shape and size that it is.
Right, right.
But I think this is the coolest answer. And that I mean that in a literal sense because they use their beaks as air conditioners. They use them to cool themselves.
Oh, wait, that is really cool. Is it similar to like why Stegosaurus had like so many plates on its back or whatever for like
Yeah,
heat
it
distribution?
is. Yeah, and similar to why elephants have like giant ears.
Oh, yeah.
So this ornithologist named Glenn Tattersall working in Canada. He went to Brazil and he set up this infrared camera to watch a Toko toucan. The camera showed that the toucan's beak was a full 10 or more degrees warmer than the outside air and the rest of its body. So it was showing up like bright red on this infrared camera.
Mm.
It also showed that as the toucan was preparing to sleep, the beak it was actually cooling down a little bit, which when you're going to sleep, you kind of want to keep some of that body heat in if you're like out in the wild, right?
Right, right.
So if I understand this correctly, the hypothesis that they came to is that toucans can actively control the blood flow in their bills to turn up or turn down the AC, so to speak, which I'm jealous of. I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, a little bit of internal heat control. That's awesome actually.
Yeah. So, yeah, next time you see Toucan Sam telling you to pick up some Fruit Loops, just know that he's carrying around an air conditioner with him.
You mentioned that the way they figured this out was like the thermal camera, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I think I like saw something when I was like looking at like, what birders use, scopes and stuff. I don't think I'm ever gonna buy a scope, or maybe I will when I'm like if I am like a super hardcore birder in the future, but not in the near future ever. But like the really fancy ones, you can do like thermal, I think, like
Yeah.
thermal imaging. So it's like I mean, sometimes it's really hard to see birds. They camouflage. There's a lot of glare from like if they're on the water, from the sun and everything, shadows. And with thermals, you eliminate all of that. You're able to tell where the bird is. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I would love to look through one day.
Hmm.
I don't think I'll ever own a thermal scope unless this podcast gets huge and we make millions.
Yeah,
Um,
I think the thermal scopes are like actually insanely expensive.
yeah,
Not and I mean all the birders that we've seen use spotting scopes, they don't use thermal ones. It may be like a newer thing. I know they use them in like hunting and stuff, but it may
right.
be a
That makes
newer
sense.
thing.
So, like we mentioned before, the most prevalent use of bills is to eat. At least that's the use that, in my opinion, causes the most fun adaptations, is eating.
Hmm.
So Keish kind of mentioned it, like the size and shape kind of depends on what they're eating. So we'll start with some ordinary backyard birds to get a good understanding and then kind of increase in coolness from there. So one of the hardest things, Keish, maybe you would agree with this, I don't know, but one of the hardest things for me when I was just starting out trying to identify songbirds, which I really kind of dove into this year more than any other year, is telling the difference between those little birds that are all kind of the same size. So like your sparrows, your finches, your warblers, especially in the winter when they don't have their bright breeding plumages. One thing that I never really thought to look at, but one that now I know to look at is the beak. Focusing on the beak is actually really useful in helping to identify these types of birds, at least generally speaking, right?
Hmm.
So generally sparrows will have short, chunky beaks, kind of like big ones, but a little shorter, and they'll use that to crack open bigger, harder seeds. Warblers are going to have kind of longer but much skinnier beaks, and they'll handle smaller seeds, smaller bits of food. And finches, I kind of think there's more variance within finches, but generally they exist sort of in the middle there, in the medium between a sparrow and a warbler. That isn't necessarily a hard and fast rule. In fact, some members of the same species have pretty noticeable beak size and shape differences. This was actually really big with Darwin's finches in the Galapagos that like kind of spurred on how we think of evolution today. I won't get into all of that because that's kind of a whole rabbit hole, but the environment and food availability can change the beak size and shape of the birds that thrive in that area, even if they're the same species as ones that thrive in a different area.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't remember like the exact experiment or like observations that he made, but I know like the beak shape, size is changing due to different food availability and stuff like that was a major part of it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll even notice that sometimes in house sparrows here. Some of them will have chunkier beaks than other ones, but
Hmm.
generally that's kind of a good baseline to start at.
Yeah,
If
you make a good point. Maybe we should look at beaks more or or bills more when trying to differentiate just like a fall plumage warbler or, something like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. I think I used that to like help me. It wouldn't get me all the way, it doesn't tell me the difference between a yellow warbler and a black pole warbler, But
Yeah.
I was starting to understand like, oh, that one's probably a warbler or close to a warbler because it doesn't have that chunky beak.
I was just gonna say, I know we use bill size to differentiate a lot of times between a hairy woodpecker and a downy woodpecker. A downy woodpecker's bill is like kind of comically small.
Yep.
So yeah, I think we have been using bills to help differentiate birds a little bit, but maybe not to the extent that we should have been.
Yeah, I think that's like a big one that once you get really good at bird identification, which I am not, but once we get there, that's something I think we're really going to be focusing on.
Yeah, wait, I
Um,
think it's now that we're just talking about it, it's coming to me. I think that's also a big thing with shorebirds. Like with the Dunlin that we saw in Bombay Hook, there's a slight like droop to its bill, which is like apparently like a huge identifier for it compared to maybe like a least sandpiper, which has a more of a straight bill.
yeah, definitely.
So yeah, dang, maybe we really should be paying more attention to the bills.
Yeah, maybe. If you take this to the extreme, you can think about hummingbirds, like we mentioned before. Their
Hmm.
bills are really long, really thin, so they can get nectar from deep within flowers. They don't have to be like big and chunky and strong because they're not chowing down on seeds. If you've never seen one, look up a picture of the sword-billed hummingbird. It's not in North America, but it would have won that initial trivia question if it were. Its bill is 80% as long as the rest of its body. So its bill is
Wow.
4 inches long. The rest of its body is 5 inches long. It's comical. It's a really weird bird.
Oh wow, yeah, this thing is I'm looking it up right now. This thing is absolutely wild.
Common misconception about hummingbirds, I think. I don't know if anyone actually thinks this, but I feel like I've heard this before. Some people think that hummingbirds kind of suck the nectar out of flowers using their bills sort of like a straw. They don't actually do this because bills are not made out of skin or like lips like we have.
Hmm.
So they can't form a seal with their mouths and like sip. So what they actually do is they have these long tongues that shoot out and back in at like rapid speed to gather all the nectar, kind of like pistons in a car engine. Um,
Hmm.
but they don't have lips, so they don't actually like sip the nectar.
Before I got into birding, I definitely thought it was like a straw. Or like growing up as a kid, I definitely thought it was like more like a straw. But
Yeah. It's yeah, one of those things like you don't really think about until you start thinking about it and you're like, "Oh, right. I guess they don't have lips."
mhm.
So another wild beak adaptation is found in the black skimmer, which we also mentioned earlier, which it kind of looks like a tern that took a hot glue gun and attached like a dollar store version of a toucan's beak to it. The top and bottom of the beak don't match in size, so it looks like kind of like shoddily put on. They look like they're one strong gust of wind away from just like falling off. If you haven't seen one, the Birds Are Real Instagram page will probably use one for our like weekly post. So check
Mhm.
that out. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, like you said, it definitely doesn't seem like it's like attached properly.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's like a Halloween costume. But
Yeah.
what they do, this is how they got their name of skimmer, is they will fly just above the water and then stick the bottom part of their beak like partway in the water as they fly. Then if they feel a fish bump into this bottom part of the beak, they'll snap down with their top beak, kind of like a mousetrap, really quick like that.
Mhm.
Um, so they use their upper and lower halves of their beaks in different ways, which is why they look kind of unconnected and why they're sort of different lengths.
That's interesting. Their like sensitivity must be like super high, like their like touch sensitivity, because I'm assuming they're flying pretty fast. So it
Yeah, they
must
are.
happen in like a split second to like if it touches the fish to be able to clamp down.
Yeah, they have like really powerful, like it's so fast, just like a snap like that. And look, if we're talking about weird bills that are used for eating, especially if we're talking about weird bills that are used for aquatic birds, we got to talk about the roseate spoonbill.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we mentioned this before. Roseate spoonbill, if you don't know, it kind of looks like a heron, but if you squished the bill down and then turned it pink. So their bill does look like a spoon, but I have a fun fact about them that actually has nothing to do with their bills. As spoonbills get older, they start balding, kind of like people. So they'll lose feathers on the top of their heads as they age. So if you
That's really
ever,
funny
yeah,
actually.
if you ever feel bad about losing some of your hair, just know that in some people's opinion, the coolest bird that's regularly found in North America is also going bald. So maybe it's a good thing. Maybe you're on the right track.
Okay. My goal has now updated from wanting to see a roseate spoonbill to wanting to see a balding roseate spoonbill.
Yeah. As the name implies, the roseate spoonbill's bill is shaped like a spoon. So it'll stick its bill in the shallow water, kind of swish it from side to side to disturb the mud and like stir up fish, crustaceans, things like that to eat. And same as with flamingos, eating shrimp and things like that is what makes the roseate spoonbill pink. So I know sometimes I have this a very deep, thematically appropriate conclusion that ties everything together, changes people's lives. Some are saying. Some are saying I'm like Aristotle, but cooler. I don't know. That's what our listeners have been saying. But I don't have anything this time. I just kind of like beaks. Birds have a lot of cool beaks. I could go down the list of birds of with cool beaks and just keep going, but I'll leave it at this. Just remember that Audubon lied about birds not being able to smell, and we would never do anything like that to you.
Never ever. Question authority, even if it's your favorite podcast hosts. All right. Yeah, thanks, Sam, for leading that discussion on bills and beaks. Learned a lot. We should do more of that bird trivia. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I have a whole bunch of them, so might sneak a couple into the next few episodes.
Sounds good. But I think that does bring us to our closing call now.
We've been on a bit of a heater, meaning that we have both got one right in a row.
Wasn't that just last episode and we got like three in a row wrong previously or something?
Yeah, but we have one right in a row, so I'm calling that a heater.
Oh, sounds good. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
take what we can get, I guess. So the
Okay.
score is 7-6.
Keisha's up, and we're
Or
coming down to the last couple episodes of the season. There's this episode, there's going to be one more, and that's going to be our final tally for this season at least.
all right, so I think I'll play the bird call for Sam this time around because I think we did the opposite last time.
Okay.
So here you go.
Okay. So sounding like a bit of a Tweety bird to me. Little Tweety, little small guy.
Is that your
So I'm
final
not,
answer?
yeah, I'm going with little small guy. Is that what it is? Um,
Yeah, pretty much.
all right. Well, okay, so it sounds like one of our songbirds that we've seen in the summer, the early fall, and I'm still on my quest to figure out what a warbler sounds like. I don't think this is what a warbler sounds like. I wouldn't call this warbling. So, going by my beak analysis from earlier, the furthest I can get from a warbler in terms of small birds that look similar is probably a sparrow. So, I think it's a sparrow. I don't think it's a white-throated sparrow because that's the O Canada one. I don't think it's a chipping sparrow because we did that one in like episode 2 or something. Maybe a swamp sparrow, maybe a house sparrow. I should know what house sparrows sound like. They're like everywhere. I'm gonna say swamp sparrow.
Not a swamp sparrow. It
Oof.
was, you were on the right track with sparrow. Doesn't have
Okay.
sparrow in the name though. It's in the family of sparrows. It's a
Ooh.
dark-eyed junco.
Oh, wow. Nice. One that we saw last week at FDR Park.
We saw it at FDR
Oh,
Park. I think we may have seen a couple at Pod when we went.
never even considered the dark-eyed junco. That's a good one. That's a good one. I will
Yeah, I also
remember
saw a
that.
bunch this morning when I went birding, so that's kind of why I picked it. I saw a ton of
Nice.
them.
All right. Well, my heater has ended. Let's see how Keisha's heater goes. I will now play the call for you.
Hmm. Okay, so I see you went a similar route. Probably a small, songy, chirpy bird. Hearing some trills in there. I should know which birds do trills and which don't. So I don't know. I'm also leaning towards like a sparrow or a warbler,
A Tweety bird, perhaps.
a Tweety bird. That is my final answer.
Nice.
No, maybe with the trills, I'm more leaning towards a warbler. A lot of warblers exist. We haven't seen some in a while. I don't think you'd give me like a out there warbler, like a black-throated blue warbler or like a black-throated green warbler or something. I mean, I could be off with the warbler thing, but if you were to give me a warbler, I feel like it'd be like a yellow warbler yellow-rumped warbler, chestnut-sided warbler, maybe. We saw a couple of palm warblers. I'll go with the one we saw, I think, most recently, a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago. I'll go with the yellow-rumped warbler.
Wow. Wow. Yep, that was it. You got it.
Nice.
Yellow rumped warbler. That's
I had to do a
impressive.
bit of a meta-analysis for that one, like what
Yeah.
what you would
What am
give me,
I
what you
thinking
wouldn't
of?
give me.
4D chess. Keish takes a 2 point lead. Wow, going into the final episode. That's a good one. I think finally I know what warbling is. I've been saying for weeks I don't know what warbling is, but then I decided I could just choose a warbler and figure out what it sounds like.
Yeah, choosing the calls for the other person also helps us figure out the calls themselves because
Yeah,
we're listening to them.
exactly. Yeah. So here's how we're gonna make the final closing caw of the season, next episode exciting. It's gonna be worth 2 points, so I could still tie it up.
And then if Sam does tie it up and I get it wrong, then we'll have some sort of tiebreaker, which is to be determined.
Yeah, but
But that
rest
would be,
assured, it'll be exciting.
yeah, that would be really cool for the, I don't know what we do. Well, we'll figure that out
We'll figure
on
it
our
out. Yeah, wrestling match
Um,
or something.
yeah, totally. I don't know how we do this. It thought just came to me. Do you think like if Rochelle posts a poll on her story or on like the Birds Are Real Instagram story and we don't look at it or something, or they DM her and we don't look at the DMs, like she can just give us the calls that the people want us to hear?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, so the Birds Are Real Instagram page is run by Rochelle. Keish and I don't have access to like the back end of it. So she'll post a story asking for suggestions for the final calls, and you can all follow and suggest. Just type in a suggestion there. Whichever bird is suggested the most, or whichever one Rochelle likes the most, will be chosen.
Yeah, or like, since we're doing multiple points, like we can have the listeners choose like three each, and we have like an
Ooh,
extravaganza,
that's
you
true.
know.
Yeah, I
Or I
like
mean,
it.
that does make it harder for you to catch up, right? But
Or easier.
or easier. I guess it depends on the calls, but
Hmm.
I don't know, just to spice it up a little bit. What
Yeah,
do
I
you
like
think?
that. I think it's good. Yeah, we'll have a closing caw extravaganza, a murder of closing caws next episode.
No, I think that'd be a cool way to wrap up the season with some audience participation.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of birds we haven't used yet. So
Hmm. A lot of birds in the world. So,
yes. Oh, and then
um,
yeah, so look if you're, look out for an Instagram post on our Birds Are Real pod Instagram.
cool. Thanks for listening to this episode, everyone. Like we've mentioned a lot in the past 5 minutes or so, there is one more episode to the season, and it's a doozy. We will have a guest on that episode. So,
A whole
um,
guest.
an entire guest. So make sure you listen up. It should be released on time on Monday, just like normal. And then you can go back and re-listen to the entire catalog over and over until season 2 starts.
Yeah, exactly. We'd like to think our podcasts are infinitely rewatchable,
Hmm.
timeless even.
I would say timeless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Rate us 5 stars if that's an option where you're listening. Follow our social medias. They're all linked in our description. It's all birds are real in some sort of form with an at sign at the beginning, probably. And as always, even though we're coming to the final episode, we still want to hear your hoot topic suggestions. So email us birdsarereal.pod@gmail.com. We welcome everything.
We look forward to hearing what you guys pick out for us for calls, and we'll see you on the flip side.
Be on the flip side.